Good morning again, everyone. I've been following the Jody Wilson-Raybould story since the story broke last February, and it's been a wild ride. I've really enjoyed reporting on this, and it's interesting to see what's coming out of this just before this election. And she's releasing this, as Global News is reporting. Jody Wilson-Raybould discusses new book, Indigenous Reconciliation, during Toronto visit. And I'd been reading through Maxime Bernier's tweets, and I knew that something was coming down the pipe that spoke directly to this. So, this is very interesting to me. Here we go. Global News. She's at the center of one of the biggest scandals facing the Liberal government, but the SNC-Lavalin scandal is not what Jody Wilson-Raybould's book is about. From Where I Stand, Rebuilding Indigenous Nations for a Stronger Canada is focused on Indigenous reconciliation and abolishing the Indian Act, but the independent candidate and former Liberal also writes about how her gender, worldview, and culture were not always compatible with Ottawa politics. I scroll down. Wilson-Raybould's book focused making sure Indigenous Canadians have equal opportunities. Quote, the Indian Act is a colonial piece of legislation that was introduced in 1976 and still exists in various iterations today, and it represents an impoverished system of government that has been imposed on Indigenous communities, taking away their traditional forms of governments, imposing legislative structures in terms of how they elect chief and council, she said. Wilson-Raybould said Canada needs to create mechanisms that enable Indigenous communities to remove themselves from the Indian Act when they're ready. She said while running as an independent that she had more conversations with members of parliament from all political stripes than during the time that she was a minister of the Crown. Quote, we need to think about why that is, Wilson-Raybould said, adding she hopes to be a bridge builder of sorts between parties. No political party has a monopoly on the truth or on solutions. And here's Mr. Bernier, and he says, this is at a presser yesterday, he said the People's Party of Canada will explore options to replace the Indian Act if elected. So I thought, wow, isn't that incredible? What timing? I don't know if it's intentional, but here we go. I think it's very interesting. Bay Today is reporting, and this is part of a larger newspaper consortium, but this is from Mr. Bernier's trip to North Bay. He was campaigning out there for Mark King. So this was reported locally by North Bay reporter Linda Holmes. Okay, here we go. People's Party of Canada will explore options to replace the Indian Act if elected. People's Party of Canada founder and party leader Maxime Bernier said the government has a lot of things to fix when it comes to complex Aboriginal issues. Bernier said when it comes to Aboriginal issues, he is looking forward to building a new relationship based on mutual respect. The PPC leader was speaking to a crowd of about 200 at a rally for Nipissing Timiskaming PPC candidate Mark King in North Bay Saturday night. Bernier said if elected, his party would explore options to repeal the paternalistic Indian Act, which he says keeps Aboriginals in a state of dependency and allows the federal government to control most aspects of their lives. He explained that his party would look at replacing the act with, quote, a new legal framework that guarantees equal rights and responsibilities to Aboriginal people as Canadians and promotes the autonomy and self-reliance of communities. Bernier made it clear there would be consultation moving forward, and his government will respect the Constitution and treaties. It will reaffirm the federal government's power to approve natural resources and infrastructure projects after adequate consultations with affected Aboriginal groups, and in partnership with them to ensure that they can benefit from these economic opportunities. Bernier said the PPC would prioritize issues on the basis of its 4 key principles: respect, freedom, fairness, and responsibility. On the principle of respect, Bernier referred to injustices committed out by the Canadian government. Quote, we cannot rewrite the past, but only seek the best way to live together in the future. This relationship must be based on mutual respect and a balanced approach between the needs of the Aboriginal population and the interests of the Canadian population as a whole. Regarding the freedom principle, Bernier said he would be willing to explore avenues to promote the establishment of individual property rights on reserves, quote, so as to empower its residents and give them increased control over their lives. When it comes to fairness, Bernier said it is unacceptable that some Aboriginal communities live in conditions no better than those in some third world countries. A People's Party government will ensure that Aboriginal communities assume more ownership of their infrastructure and the services they receive in partnership with Ottawa and other levels of government. And on his final principle, responsibility, Bernier told the crowd there is no evidence that living conditions are improving in Aboriginal communities despite Ottawa spending about $21 billion a year on Aboriginal programs. He went on to say the federal government and Aboriginal administration administrations have a responsibility to ensure that taxpayer money is well spent. A People's Party government will review federal spending to ensure that programs are better targeted to benefit the Aboriginal population, in particular the communities that have the greatest needs. The PPC acknowledged that some communities are prosperous while others are much poorer than the Canadian average. Many don't have the basic services that we take for granted, such as access to clean water. There are other major issues to address regarding treaty negotiations, housing, and property rights on reserves. Bernier pledges to review federal spending to ensure programs are better targeted to benefit the Aboriginal population, in particular the communities that have the greatest needs. We need to do reform. We need to do consultation. So I think that all of that is very on topic for this election period. I think that all of that is very important this election period. The former Attorney General, the one who was removed for saying that Justin Trudeau is not allowed to and should not be putting this much pressure on an Attorney General, was removed and then proved correct. And now talking about the pathway to Aboriginal rights. And the People's Party of Canada is, so far, from what I've seen, and I have looked, is the only political party talking about repealing the Indian Act or opening it up and looking at making changes. If I'm incorrect, please do correct me in the comments. I'm always interested, and I will correct my show, so let me know. Thanks for watching, everybody. Voting day is October 21st, and so don't forget to make your voice heard and make your vote count. And, well, thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.